What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we have some news breaking out of Toronto that has the entire Leafs nation shaken right now. Seriously, this is one of those stories that hits differently because it is not just about hockey. It is about a guy who has genuinely given everything he has for this franchise, a guy who plays through pain, who gives you every single shift, every single night, and today we have to talk about something that none of us were really prepared to hear. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, smash the like button, drop a comment down below letting me know how you are feeling about this, and let us get right into it, because there is a lot to unpack here. The Toronto Maple Leafs have officially announced that forward Max Domi has been ruled out indefinitely following complications that arose from an off-season surgery. And I want you to really sit with that word for a second. Indefinitely, not 4 to 6 weeks, not day to day. Indefinitely, that is a word that sends chills down your spine as a Leafs fan, and it is a word that tells you the organization itself does not have a clear timeline on when this man is coming back, or in some of the scariest corners of this conversation, whether he is coming back at all this season. Now let us set the scene here because context is everything with a story like this. Max Domi gutted his way through 80 games for the Toronto Maple Leafs last season while dealing with a nagging injury, recording 12 goals and 24 assists. The offseason was supposed to be about getting healthy, and instead it has turned into something far more alarming. Think about that. This man dragged himself through an entire 82-game regular season schedule, missing only 2 games, playing through something that most guys would have shut it down for weeks over. That is the character of Max Domi. That is who this human being is. He plays hurt, he competes hard, he does not take a shift off, and every single Leafs fan has respected him immensely for that over the years. And what happened? He got into the offseason, did what he was supposed to do, and went and got surgery. He took care of the problem. He did the responsible thing. He wanted to come back healthy for next season. He wanted to be available, wanted to be ready for training camp, wanted to contribute to what is shaping up to be a really interesting Leafs roster going into 2026 to 27. But then everything went sideways. Domi underwent back surgery this spring, and according to Toronto Sun columnist Steve Simmons, the procedure went seriously wrong. The specific nature of the complications has not been made public, but Simmons reported that Domi was unable to walk in the days following the operation, a development that created significant alarm within the organization. Let that sink in for a moment. Unable to walk. We are not talking about a guy who had some swelling or some soreness after surgery. We are talking about a situation where the people inside the Toronto Maple Leafs organization, the doctors, the trainers, the front office were genuinely alarmed. When an NHL organization uses the word alarmed internally, that is not something they say lightly. These are people who deal with injuries every single day. They see broken bones, they see torn ligaments, they see concussions, and they handle it all with a calm and clinical professionalism. For them to be alarmed tells you this situation was serious in a way that went beyond normal post-surgical complications. Simmons also claimed that Domi selected his own surgeon for the procedure, which is not uncommon in the modern NHL, but in this case appears to have had severe consequences. Now, I want to be very careful here because we do not want to get into a blame game. Players choosing their own surgeons is incredibly common in professional sports. These are adults, these are professionals, they have the right to make their own medical decisions, and in the vast majority of cases it works out just fine. But this time something went wrong. Whatever happened in that operating room, or in the recovery after it, created a situation that has now put Max Domi's entire 2026 to 27 season in serious jeopardy. The team did not disclose the nature of the surgery when making the announcement, stating only that it was done to address an issue he played through during the 2025 to 26 season. The Maple Leafs said Domi will continue working with the club's medical staff and will be reevaluated at the start of training camp. So there you go. That is the official line from the organization. Reevaluate at training camp. That is a very diplomatic way of saying we do not know, and we are going to have to wait and see. And while I understand why organizations do that, why they want to protect the privacy of their players and not make promises they cannot keep, it does leave Leafs fans in an incredibly uncomfortable position where there is just uncertainty hanging over everything. Analysts on the SDPN podcast believe the team's active off-season moves show that Domi will not play this season, with Adam Wilde saying plainly that it is pretty clear Max Domi is not going to play. And honestly, when you look at the moves Toronto has made this off-season, it is very hard to argue against that assessment. The Leafs have gone out and completely rebuilt the pieces around their core, and a lot of those moves address the exact areas where Domi would have contributed. Toronto signed Teddy Blueger, Colton Sissons, Jack Roslovic, and Nick Paul, giving head coach Jim Hiller significantly more options through the middle. When your team goes out and aggressively adds depth at the exact position your injured player fills, it is hard not to read between the lines on that one. And from a pure cap management standpoint, there is actually a silver lining here, as cold and uncomfortable as it feels to say that. The Maple Leafs are already over the cap, so Domi will likely be placed on long-term IR, meaning his cap hit would not count as long as he does not play this season. He is entering the third season of a 4-year, $15 million contract that carries an annual cap hit of $3.75 million. So if he does go on LTIR, Toronto gets that cap space back to use on other players, which is significant when you consider how aggressive they have been this summer and how tight the salary cap situation is across the league right now. But here is the thing, and I really need to say this clearly, cap space and roster implications are secondary to what actually matters here, which is the health and well-being of a 31-year-old man who has given his whole career to this game, who has fought through things most people will never understand, and who now finds himself in a genuinely frightening medical situation. General Manager Chayka addressed the situation, saying, "Max is a tough situation. Obviously he's a special person and loves the Leafs, and we love him. He had a procedure, didn't go the way we had hoped. He played through some injuries, tough kid, but ultimately we'll get to training camp and assess him from there. He embodies being a Toronto Maple Leaf and cares and really wants to be here for the good times, so we're going to support him like all our players and make sure he's in a good spot. And you know what, whatever your opinions are on the front office, whatever debates are happening about the roster decisions and the moves they have made, you have to give Chayka credit for those words. That is a human response. That is a GM who is talking about a player the way you would want someone to talk about someone you care about. This is not just an asset on a spreadsheet. Max Domi is a person, he is a teammate, he is someone who people inside that organization genuinely care about, and you can feel that coming through in those words. Now let us talk about the career of Max Domi, because this man deserves that respect and that recognition right now. Drafted 12th overall by the Arizona Coyotes back in 2013, Domi has accumulated 150 goals and 486 points in 815 career games across multiple franchises including the Coyotes, Montreal Canadiens, Columbus Blue Jackets, Carolina Hurricanes, Chicago Blackhawks, Dallas Stars, and the Maple Leafs. That is a hockey career worth celebrating. That is a decade plus of professional hockey at the highest level. And this is also a player who has dealt with adversity off the ice too. Being a type 1 diabetic who has never once used that as an excuse, who manages that condition every single day while performing at an elite professional level. The toughness of Max Domi is not just something you see on the ice. It runs all the way through him. In his 3 seasons with the Maple Leafs, he has put up 29 goals and 87 assists for 116 points in 234 games, producing at just under half a point per game. That is genuinely solid production for a middle six forward making $3.75 million a year on a cap hit. He is not a top 6 superstar, nobody is calling him that, but he is the kind of player every contending team needs. He wins battles along the boards, he plays with an edge, he takes the body, he brings physicality that Toronto frankly has not always had in abundance, and he is a good locker room guy. Those kinds of players matter more than analytics models sometimes capture. And Leafs fans know this. They love this guy. They love Max Domi. They love his energy, they love his compete level, they love the way he shows up in big moments. There is a reason why whenever Domi scores a big goal in a big game, the crowd at Scotiabank Arena absolutely loses their mind. He is that kind of player. He is that kind of personality. He is someone you want in your corner when games matter. His training camp evaluation will be the first real checkpoint in what could be a long road back, with the focus remaining squarely on Domi's health and long-term well-being rather than any on-ice considerations. And that is exactly the right way to think about this. When you hear stories about a player unable to walk after a surgery that was supposed to fix something, you stop worrying about the power play and the penalty kill and the line combinations. You just want the guy to be okay. You just want him to walk out of this whole situation healthy and whole, and everything else can figure itself out. Domi's future with the Maple Leafs is incredibly murky right now, and even with training camp on the horizon, His status remains deeply uncertain. The Leafs will reassess when camp opens, and at that point we will hopefully have a much clearer picture of where things stand. Maybe the news is better than we fear. Maybe the complications have been addressed and he is further along in his recovery than the outside world knows. Maybe there is a version of this where Max Domi suits up for this team midseason and makes an impact when it counts most. That would be the best-case scenario, and I think every Leafs fan is holding on to some version of that hope right now. But we also have to be realistic. We have to be honest with ourselves. When a player is ruled out indefinitely in late May and the organization is speaking in terms of training camp evaluations rather than week-by-week timelines, you have to prepare yourself for the possibility that this is a lost season for Max.